So this video will be interesting. I have never really done a film criticism in a video essay format. Usually I do it on my community posts, but I felt that given Carrie is a huge horror icon and a classic amongst Americans, I figured why not make this a special occasion by honoring Mr. Stephen King himself on which Carrie adaptation was the best. Sissy Spacek, Angela Bettis, or Chloe Moretz. I'm your host, SSJ Raiku, and in today's video, I'll be dissecting each Carrie movie from what they did best and what they did poorly. To explain the rules of this video essay, we'll be starting off with the films in release order, so 1976 Carrie first, to 2002 Carrie second, to 2013 Carrie last. We'll be talking about which actress did Carrie White the best, which film was the most accurate to the novel adaptation, and a multitude of other subjects. On the screen, you'll see every single subject, and one subject that will be unincluded in this is the quality of effects, as it is not fair to each film to compare which looked the best, as they had to comply with what they had at the time. So, now that we have our rules established, let's get into which Carrie adaptation was the best overall. Just be forewarned that this video will have major spoilers for all three Carrie films. So if you want to watch the movies pure, I suggest clicking off and going to do that. Now, without further ado, let's dive right in.
You take the battle and it's over, and that I've lost my composure, cause I'm staring into space. And now my heart's beating fast like a baby's caught up in a chapter. I'll soon reveal the beast. There's a beast in my soul and it wants to evolve. Keep on pushing me so I can end it. Now the words leave your tongue, where did that power come from? Saying to do that place that you condemn to.
Starting with the pros, Carrie 1976 is a classic, and for many good reasons. Starting with the subject herself, Carrie White. Sissy Spacek did an absolutely incredible job acting as the broken girl. Her best part, however, is the 1,000-yard stare she gives you during the prom massacre. Out of all three Carries, this one was the scariest to look at when covered in blood. With Angela Bettis and Chloe Moretz, I was intimidated, but with Sissy Spacek, I was genuinely unnerved by her 1,000-yard stare and just her look overall. Unlike Angela Bettis and Chloe Moretz, she actually looks ghastly and terrifying, as she should. Not only that, but her acting with Carrie in her normal state is incredible. To me, she does Carrie's facial expressions and voice right. My only issue with the actress is her appearance, but not in the way you think. You see, Sissy Spacek has very sharp features, and this is where it gets weird. The sharp features give off a supermodel look, which in turn ruins the illusion of Carrie being your typical shy, unkempt girl, but weirdly, this same look goes away when she's doing Carrie's prom massacre. It only ever breaks the illusion of Carrie when she's casual. In other words, she's weirdly too pretty to be playing Carrie White. I'm not saying Angela Bettis and Chloe Moretz are ugly, because they're not. It's more so that her features are too sharp to be playing Carrie. Next up is the cinematography. The cinematography is incredible, with the best example being at the prom massacre. The lens used for the brief, "they're going to laugh at you" moment is insanely psychological, and when I watched it for the first time, it essentially reached into my brain and rattled the heck out of it. Even the cinematography for the scene of Chris Hargensen, Billy, and his friends was amazing. However, the first scene of the film is extremely uncomfortable for me to watch. In the first 10 minutes of the film, you see a lot of nudity in the shower scene. It was not just the woman's bosom that was exposed, but also the lower areas. And what made it all worse was that it was in slow motion. I got so uncomfortable, I fast forwarded it until it got to Carrie. And even then, I was still extremely uncomfortable there as well. If it weren't for the first 10 minutes, the cinematography would have been perfect. Next is the treatment of Billy's character. You see, in the Carrie novel, Billy Nolan was a genuine psychopathic delinquent boy who loved the suffering of others. And unfortunately, there are absolutely no pros to John Travolta's Billy Nolan. In fact, this depiction of Billy Nolan is the worst part of the film. I understand that the 70s had Grease as its fad, but looking at old photos of 70s delinquents, you'll find that Grease had barely anything to do with delinquents, as the only real similarities between the two were the hairstyle. To be precise, 70s delinquents were actually more associated with disco and funk rather than Grease in the 70s. If this were the 50s and 60s, then Billy would be a greaser. But because this is the 70s, Billy comes off as less of a delinquent and more of your stereotypical tough guy. Billy Nolan looks nothing more than a greaser, and his way of speaking via grease slang does not make him sound cool or like a delinquent at all. In fact, he sounds way more like those watered-down, goofy delinquents you'll find in old kids' cartoons. Just to let you know, this version of Billy Nolan was nails on a chalkboard to me, because this depiction of the character was genuinely horrendous and annoyed the actual crap out of me. Next in line is the depiction of Carrie's school. I found this depiction rather amazing, as it gives us real insight into why Carrie would snap. Having both the boys and girls of the school isolate Carrie for being a freak and religious makes more sense as to why Carrie later snaps, to the point it makes Carrie's massacre understandable. Chris Hargensen is especially a core piece here, as she was genuinely rotten and manipulative. Nancy Allen, the actress who played Chris, was immaculate at the role, and I could not believe how incredibly she replicated Chris's personality from the novel, with the only difference being that she's crueler than she was in the novel. As for Tommy and Sue Snell, they were unfortunately pretty bland, and the depiction of Coach Desjardins was not very good either. In fact, this is the worst depiction of the coach, as she was not at all motherly towards Carrie, and in one of the scenes, she even advocates for what the girls did to Carrie, saying that she wouldn't blame them. Unfortunately, this depiction of Coach Desjardins is the most accurate to the novel's depiction, which is a shame because I prefer the other two adaptations' changes to Desjardins, where she was more motherly and loving to Carrie. However, what makes this depiction interesting is that Coach Desjardins in the novel is still somehow much crueler than this one, having laughed at Carrie during the prom incident and actually having disgust and contempt for the poor girl during their time together. Overall, the 1976 adaptation of Carrie is amazing and nearly perfect. While not entirely accurate to the novel, the 1976 adaptation's changes are welcome, with some being better than the novel itself. The best part of this film is Sissy Spacek herself, as she replicates Carrie White's personality the best. Before we begin, I just want to say that this is the most novel-accurate depiction of Carrie. At least that's what most people say, but if you ask me, it's not. We won't be getting into that until later. So starting off with the pros, Carrie 2002 is, for the most part, a good adaptation of the Carrie story. Starting with Angela Bettis, she brings out the best appearance for Carrie, along with certain pieces of Carrie's personality. Angela, in this adaptation, looks pale, starved, and frail, which is how I imagine Carrie looking. Not to mention, because this film is more so a psychological horror, Angela Bettis absolutely thrives in this adaptation, making the psychological horror all the more terrifying. Her Carrie reached into my brain and made me feel like I was rewatching Neon Genesis Evangelion, which, if you don't know, is filled to the brim with psychological horror. The only con to her character, and this is not the actress's fault at all, is the penguin walk in the third act. I'm sorry, but I just could not take her seriously when she walked like this. Another thing is the ending to Carrie's story, which is what makes me say that this depiction of Carrie is not the most novel accurate. You see, after Carrie's rampage, Carrie somehow survives her house's collapse, which is entirely inaccurate to the novel. In fact, the ending tries to set up another Carrie 2, where Carrie and Sue Snell drive off to Florida. This is actually true, by the way, as they were planning to set up a TV drama series. Luckily, they weren't stupid enough to humiliate themselves twice and canceled it because of poor ratings and Angela Bettis declining the role. Next up is cinematography. The cinematography is absolutely incredible, especially for its role in making the psychological horror all the more overwhelming. My favorite part has to be the classroom scene, where everything is sped up, has some color effects, and just overwhelms the heck out of you. Another favorite is the prom massacre, where we actually get to see it from Carrie's perspective. We see what happens behind the dilated pupils, unlike the 1976 and 2013 adaptations, and it makes for an incredible experience. However, there are a few flaws with the cinematography. Certain scenes look like they were shot in my AV class, which is code for it looks like it was shot by an amateur. The biggest flaw has to be the CGI meteorites, used twice in the film, along with a lot of Carrie's massacre being CGI. I understand CGI was trendy at the time, but having most of Carrie's destruction be CGI makes the telekinesis look really bad. While yes, in certain scenes the CGI doesn't look so bad, having most of her prom massacre being CGI is anticlimactic. However, I will give props to Carrie's destruction scale being the most novel accurate, as Carrie destroys all of Chamberlain rather than just the school gym. Another issue I have with the cinematography is the whole route they went with the film, which was this detective interviewing witnesses and whatnot angle. I genuinely did not like it because every time I got invested, it would fade back to the interrogation room and I'd get annoyed. Next is Billy's character. This was the best adaptation of Billy Nolan out of the three movies. He fully embodies the psychopathic, violent senior that was Billy in the novel. This man genuinely scared me, and the actor who plays him, Jesse Cadotte, played Billy's psychopathic and violent behavior like a fiddle. This man exhibited a masterclass act in sheer psychopathic character to the point that he made me unsettled. There are no cons to this depiction of Billy at all. It's genuinely perfect. Next in line is the depiction of Carrie's school. Honestly, this depiction of the school was rather good. Tommy's not a total douche like he was in the 1976 or 2013 adaptation. He's actually a kind guy who genuinely treats Carrie with kindness and respect. Unlike the other two adaptations where he doesn't want to go to prom with Carrie because she's weird, Tommy's reason for not wanting to go to ask Carrie to the prom is that he thinks it's absolutely rude and disrespectful and that they should leave Carrie alone. This is the best depiction of Tommy, honestly. However, Sue Snell stayed the same narratively, with the exception of that stupid ending. She just exists. Now, let me tell you, Coach Desjardins in this film is phenomenal. You see, this film's adaptation of the Coach is genuinely amazing because she is a Giga Chad. She genuinely cares for Carrie and is quite literally her guardian angel. Unlike the other two Desjardins who simply punish the girls for filling Carrie's locker with tampons by making them do a ton of workouts or else they'd be banned from prom, this Desjardins does that and some more. She quite literally collected every single tampon used for the prank on Carrie, put them in a duffel bag, and threw all of them at the same girls involved in the prank. Rena Sofer did amazing. Also, fun fact and a little bit of lore on my childhood. I watched Once Upon a Time all the time with my mom, and I was shocked when I saw Rena Sofer playing Coach Desjardins. It hit me with a crap ton of nostalgia because my mom and I loved Once Upon a Time so much. We have the entire series on DVD, meaning I could rewatch it if I wanted to. Unfortunately, as bad as it is, the best part of these schools' depiction is the bullying. Genuinely, the school's cruelty is shockingly realistic to the experiences of my own. One of the girls flat out asks,
"You think she's retarded?"
I'm sorry, but the fact that this was the best depiction of the bullying has to be insane. The 2000s were truly a wonder. Overall, 2002 Carrie was good, but the third act is a disappointment, sloppy, and just overall anticlimactic. I thank God that these suckers managed to stop at this movie instead of continuing by making that Carrie TV series. Seriously, the ending to the movie was atrocious, and they should have left it as Carrie's house collapsed and she died, instead of Sue Snell somehow comes to Carrie's house, performs partial CPR on Carrie, and magically revives her so they can escape to Florida. The detective angle was also annoying. The CGI meteorites should have never been used. Above all, Carrie's penguin walk should have never existed. Its first and second acts were perfect, but the third act screwed absolutely everything up. In fact, Sue Snell's partial CPR is so infuriating, I could rant about it for hours, but I won't because I want this video to be reasonably long. So, yeah, I would moderately recommend this movie. It's pretty good. So, starting off, the 2013 adaptation of Carrie is absolutely incredible and for a ton of reasons. Starting off with Carrie's actress, Chloe Moretz. She looks like how I would imagine Carrie to look like, to a T. She's got the blonde hair, she's got the build, she's got the looks I exactly imagined for Carrie. Now, just like Bettis and Spacek, she does have some flaws, but it's not her fault. For starters, her skin is too fair, and that's not her fault. It's actually quite the minor detail because while I prefer Bettis' pale appearance, it's ultimately a very minor thing. After all, Chloe Moretz is at least 90% accurate to my vision. Another thing is Moretz emulates the personality the least, which is why I can understand people saying it's hard to imagine Moretz being Carrie. However, she still does an absolutely stellar job at emulating Carrie's personality, especially since she's competing with two Carrie icons who played Carrie's personality like a fiddle. Not to mention, this was very early in her career, as she was 15 at the time of production. That's weird, by the way, because they were having a 15-year-old playing 18 to 19-year-old. Before people say that Carrie was 16, may I remind you that she is a senior in high school? She'd have to skip 2 whole grades, which is why I'm saying she's 18. Also because I've seen way too much nude Carrie to be comfortable with the idea she's around my age. Anyway, Chloe Moretz was a very good Carrie actress. Next up is the cinematography. I mean, come on, are we even going to compare? The 2013 adaptation's camera work is top tier. Literally, all of it was perfect. I mean, look at the prom scene. Look at how when Carrie levitates. The 2013 adaptation is on a whole other level. What else do I have to say? Next is Billy, and honestly, he could have been better. He's sort of an in-between between 1976 Billy and 2002 Billy. He's cruel, but he's not straight up psychopathic like 2002 Billy. To be honest, he was a good character, but not on the same level as 2002 Billy. It's not a major flaw, it's just something minor. The only real flaw this Billy has is looking like a grown man when he's a senior. I know he's 18 to 19, which is legally an adult, but this guy does not look like he's 18 to 19. He looks like he's 25 at minimum. Wait, why is he 18 to 19, but Carrie is 16 when they're the same grade? Next in line is the school. To be honest, it's a very mixed bag. Tommy reverts back to his douchey 1976 version. Sue Snell gets a bigger role that isn't dog water like the 2002 version. And Coach Desjardins is still very motherly to Carrie, but not outright aggressive to Carrie's bullies. Chris Hargensen does get a major look change, but this might get me in trouble. You see, Chris Hargensen looks ugly in this movie. And I actually like it because in my experience, the popular girls at my school are pretty ugly. At least the mean ones anyways. However, that could just be me. I don't know, because the actress who plays her, Portia Doubleday, is really pretty. So I don't understand how she looks ugly in the 2013 adaptation. So yeah, it's a very mixed bag, but I like it because it feels somewhat balanced. Not to mention, having only the girls bully Carrie makes more sense in my experience. The reason why I say this is that I have experienced a girl getting bullied by another girl, but the girl who bullies her refuses to bow to me. It would make sense that Billy and his friends would be the only males participating in bullying Carrie, since they are tied to Chris. Overall, the 2013 adaptation was a masterpiece. Unfortunately, I cannot mention everything else they did amazing in the film, but if there is one thing I will say, this is arguably the most accurate adaptation if we ignore the usage of the internet in the film. Plus, my favorite part is that they actually let Carrie levitate, just like in the novel. Seriously, seeing her levitate like she did in the novel got me giddy. She absolutely radiated Tetsuo Shima vibes when she levitated. Everybody likes to say, this film tried nothing new, when in reality, I could give you a whole list of everything they tried new. I'm sorry, but this film is underrated. As a connoisseur of espers, this adaptation of Carrie is one of the best adaptations of an esper I have ever seen. Seriously, even anime Tetsuo can barely compare. She's top 5, 100%. Kimberly Pierce, you outdid yourself, and I don't even know who you are. I'm sorry, but 2013 Carrie wins this by a huge edge. If you ask me, if it wasn't for Carrie's levitation, the character depth in the 2013 adaptation, and proper usage of Billy and Sue Snell, and Coach Desjardins' motherly kindness towards Carrie, 1976 Carrie would have won. I mean, there are even some factors I didn't even mention that allowed 2013 Carrie to slip by and win. Look at the polarizing differences between the Margaret Whites. With 1976, Margaret White's actress was not acting like a believable psychopath. However, with 2013, she acted like an actual psychopath to the point her presence alone made me uneasy. So, yeah, 2013 Carrie was the absolute best adaptation of the Carrie novel. And what I will say is I am looking forward to see how Amazon adapts the Carrie novel, because there's two ways this can go. Either they absolutely fumble the adaptation, or they do an absolutely stellar job. I'm well aware it's going to be a TV series with 8 episodes, and that's actually quite exciting, because that might mean that they're going into some really big detail with this. I do think that Carrie's new actress in this show does look way too pretty to be playing Carrie, and I mean way too pretty. She's even prettier than freaking Sissy Spacek. However, I think Amazon might just do a good job with this, because given that they've adapted Invincible and The Boys into amazing TV shows, I think there's no doubt that Amazon just might not fumble the bag. There is a possibility, but I don't think they're going to fumble the bag, because it's only 8 episodes. They're not doing this huge series. So, yeah, I'm really excited for the Amazon adaptation of Carrie this year, and I cannot wait to see it. And before I end this video, I will be saying that there's going to be a sequel to this video essay where I go over why the 2013 adaptation is the best, as I go into more depth on my opinion on the 2013 adaptation. That's all for now, and this is SJ Raikou signing off. Peace!